So, Utapau was the site of one of the most significant battles of the end of the Clone Wars, where Republic forces kind of formally put an end to Separatist resistance. And while there were plenty of battles going on at the end of the war, Utapau is the one that sticks in our memory the most. But then it kind of disappears from the story of Star Wars, so I figured today we could talk about what happened to Utapau after the Battle of Utapau. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So, we have to establish a bit about Utapau to begin with. Let's talk about the very end of the war and kind of the brief build-up to the Battle of Utapau, and tap a little bit into what happened before the battle. So, Utapau has been settled for tens of thousands of years, about 57,000 years by the point of the Star Wars movies, and it's been a key instrument or a key location in the Outer Rim for quite some time. It played a minor role in the Great Hyperspace Disaster as one of the many worlds that was a victim of the Great Hyperspace Disaster that left that world isolated for a period of time during the era of the High Republic. But most of that's not really fleshed out. Utapau tends to be just a background world mentioned in a list of other worlds, and not much more than that. When the war broke out, Utapau was initially neutral, having no allegiance within the Clone Wars, and tried to remain out of the conflict, but that didn't stand for long, as the Separatists sought control of this world for strategic reasons, and eventually they simply took it. Utapau's local defense forces were unable to repel a massive droid invasion, which is not surprising, and the world quickly fell under Separatist control, albeit a bit quietly. And the Separatists managed to kind of keep this out of the eye of the Republic by simply making it part of a larger string of conquests. It was just, once again, another world in a list of worlds. But that would change as Republic intelligence got tipped off that Separatist leaders were gathered on Utapau. This would ultimately lead to the Battle of Utapau, and I'm not really going to go into the battle itself, as that story's been covered plenty of times. It's a key plot point in Revenge of the Sith. But ultimately, at the end of that battle, Separatist leadership was scattered, with the remaining Separatist leaders retreating to Mustafar as Utapau fell under Republic control, and the battle that ensued there ultimately resulted in the death of General Grievous. During that battle, Order 66 was declared, and by the end of the fighting, the Republic had begun the transition into the Galactic Empire. Now, with a massive clone army on that planet already when the Order came down, the planet almost immediately fell under Imperial occupation, and the Imperial forces there quickly turned on local resistance cells, seeing them as a potential threat in the future. We actually, once again, see this in Revenge of the Sith, in a brief scene where we do see local resistance fighters being arrested by now Imperial clone troopers. As the Empire took control of Utapau, it was actually given a place in the Imperial Senate, something it didn't seem to have during the days of the Galactic Republic. And the story behind this was that they were basically going to give Utapau more representation than it had ever had by giving them a place in the Imperial Senate. Now, anyone who knows the Imperial Senate knows that that's really not a very meaningful position, and at the end of the day, the Imperial Senate has very limited power and capability, so it really means next to nothing, but it was a ceremonial move designed to sort of keep them from actively supporting rebellion. A pro-Imperial senator was appointed for Utapau, Daho Sajan, who was remarkably unpopular among the people of Utapau, who often saw him as a traitor to the planet itself, seeking to sort of sell the planet out to the Empire for his own personal gain, which some could say he did. He lived in a cushy apartment on Coruscant, and not on the planet, as it descended into the kind of chaos that sort of ran rampant throughout the Outer Rim under the Empire. That left Utapau dissatisfied with the Empire, like much of the galaxy, but unlike many of the other Outer Rim worlds and many of the worlds that saw combat during the Clone Wars, Utapau never rose up against the Empire. Well, they definitely had their misgivings, and they weren't fans of Imperial control by any means. They never got to the point of armed rebellion like places like Ryloth. As a result, Utapau never really became a serious battlefield during the course of the Galactic Civil War. Or at least as far as we know. Utapau's story basically ends about 15 years before the original trilogy. We have nothing after that, so there absolutely is room for a rebellion on Utapau, but as far as we know, it never happened, and while there was some civil unrest, it was quickly met by force by the Empire, and that's it. Utapau's story pretty abruptly ends there, which ultimately, in my opinion, gives me the idea that perhaps in the future we'll hear about an uprising on Utapau against the Empire, but that's just speculation at that point. Ultimately, Utapau, like much of the rest of the galaxy, fell under the Empire's control and was unhappy with their political situation for the foreseeable future under a new totalitarian regime. But Utapau wasn't the only planet to get the short end of the stick under the Empire, not by a long shot. If you'd like to learn about another world that played a major role in the Clone Wars, and then was basically turned around and backstabbed by the Empire, I'll leave a link up here to my video on what happened to Kamino after the Clone Wars. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments whether you think we're going to hear about an insurrection on Utapau against the Empire at some point in the future, or do you think that world is simply a Clone Wars world that will never really pop up anywhere else, or maybe just be mentioned in the background here or there? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars or anywhere else in science fiction, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.